Kurt Metzger recently did a Joe Rogan appearance, but I want to start this off by just showing a little bit about how stupid cancel culture is. So this is just a little bit from Jimmy Dore's show about Kurt.
To Kurt's manager who booked him at this club in October.
He didn't know.
So this was an email sent from the club.
Mm-hmm.
From this club, this is the email.
Okay.
After careful consideration and discussion with our team, investors, local comedians, and neighborhood advocacy groups. What? We've encountered a challenging situation that requires us to revisit the planned shows. Capitol Hill, that's the neighborhood and a comedy club, right? Is known for its progressive values. And we receive, and some of those progressive values turned out to be groupthink and censorship. Capitol Hill is known for its progressive values, and we've received significant feedback expressing concerns about the alignment of these upcoming shows with the neighborhood.
So the reason I want to talk about this is because this attitude, this like, we need to shut down people in comedy who say things that are offensive to us, has clearly carried over to everything, where it's like, now we can accuse you of hate speech and shut you down if someone feels offended. And we're going to go deep into this because there is a lot of it with the Israel thing. You can see this type of thing being weaponized, this like, well, I'm insulted, so that's violence against me type of bullshit.
Hood ethos.
Okay, Jimmy, let me just interject, because this is my favorite thing of this. I'm not at all mad at all. This is a gift. When I read this, I go, wait, isn't Capitol Hill where they set up the Chaz? Remember when their neighborhood ethos was they seceded from the Union?
Yes.
For the summer.
So this is in that neighborhood in Seattle where they tried to set up this anarchist kind of 4-block radius.
I didn't know it was back as part of America.
It was a total joke. They ended up killing a kid.
Yeah, it was a joke, except when they killed like 3 unarmed teens. Ironic. It was the most ironic city in the world, it's known as.
They're making great points about comedy in general. One of my favorite shows for the last year or so has been Kill Tony. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a live stand-up, like kind of basically workshop where they pull names out of a hat and give people a chance to do comedy. And if they suck, they roast them. But if that was censored, or if like these types of people were involved and can be like, well, that hurt my feelings, that show would never be able to air. And it's crazy that this is the level we've gotten to in society where we allow this. It's like, if you don't like what someone's saying, it's real easy to turn it off. And the reason that this shit is being ramped up again is to convince people to support things like a TikTok ban. And I talk to people all over the city. I talked to a guy the other day who was a social media manager at a big company, and he supported a TikTok. He's like, well, I guess it's probably going to happen. He has no idea that the real reason behind them shutting down TikTok, he just thinks, oh, well, China, China's trying to get us. So
I'm going to venture to say they don't.
This feedback includes concerns from local advocacy groups that are deeply embedded in our demented mental community and work towards upholding its values.
Okay.
First of all, comedy is not about upholding any value except comedy. And what comedy is supposed to poke holes in the status quo and make people uncomfortable. That's the best form of comedy. That's Lenny Bruce. That's George Carlin. That's Bill Hicks. That's Sam Kinison. That's Don Rickles.
Boomers. Oh, you mean boomers? Jimmy, the comedy doesn't even figure in. Upholding its values, they shit on the sidewalk there.
I know.
If you don't like something, it's very simple to turn it off. When did liberals become the goddamn Christian right of the 1980s? The same type of people that were like, oh, that music is satanic. My son killed himself because he listened to heavy metal. no, your son killed himself because you're an incorrigible. I don't know if it's okay to say on the air, but it should be. I just said it anyway. But again, it's like now nothing about my political views, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but nothing about my political views has changed over the last 15 years. The Democrats have become a right-wing party. It's insane.
But the thing
So
is, this
let's
all
finish
made up.
reading
Okay.
this. Given the feedback and to avoid any potential negative impact on both our club and the artists involved, as well as to maintain the harmony within our community, we believe the most responsible course of action is to not move forward with the shows for Dave Smith.
Well, I get it. He's a scumbag racist.
So
Dave Smith doesn't align.
Dave Smith.
Luis Gomez.
Dave Smith, who's the anti-war guy who just dismantled people about their support for the genocide in Gaza. That guy.
Dave Smith has been on fire lately. The way he dismantled Laura Loomer in that debate, Due Dissidents did a great piece on it, but he basically said, she's like, well, everyone in Gaza is guilty of Hamas's crimes, because they elected Hamas. And so Dave Smith goes like, the United States, would you agree that the United States has like killed a lot of innocent people in the Iraq war and Afghanistan? And Loomer is one of those kind of like libertarian type conservatives. And she's like, yeah, of course. So Dave Smith just comes back with this left hook and he's like, are we all guilty of those deaths? Should we be targets because our government kills a bunch of people in different countries? And man, she had nothing to say about that. But anyway, Dave Smith is a G.
Well, I bet you they're not familiar with that work. They're probably know.
Yeah, and that's a great point Jimmy's making there. This is obviously like a very left liberal leaning club. They're probably very like on the Israel issue. They're probably very, pro-Palestinian rights or whatever. And they're going to ban Dave Smith from their club because he's a conservative or he's a right winger. He's right wing.
Legion of Skanks podcast.
So then also Luis J. Gomez. Now, I'm not totally familiar with who he is.
I would say he's the ringleader of this group.
Okay. Okay.
Big J. Wait, where's Big J?
So hang on.
There?
So then.
Jay wasn't even on it.
Jim Florentine.
I don't know why he got grouped in.
I don't understand. And it says, sadly, Kurt Metzger.
It was a deep cut. That's why I have sympathy for her, because she didn't want to do it.
This decision was not made lightly, and we want to ensure it does not reflect on your talent and the quality of your work, but it reflects on how mental we are at this comedy club and how mental our community is and how demented and ridiculous a comedy booker thinks that they have to consult outside advocacy groups to let her know how to book her own comedy club. Comedy clubs are not supposed to be a safe space. I'm going to mansplain it.
Thanks. Oh, boomer mansplaination coming through.
People don't want to go to a comedy club and feel like they have the same ethos they do when they go to an office, when they go to work. They go to
You need to report to HR for that joke, sir.
Comedy club to be free of that shit.
I know. You would think people that shit on the sidewalk would understand freedom.
So it keeps going. We will also ensure that any tickets sold are refunded promptly to our patrons, and we will communicate the decision to them with the sensitivity and respect. So
that's what I'm doing.
Any comedy club wrapped up in words like sensitivity and community values, and that's not a real comedy club. They're cosplaying comedy, and what they're doing is practicing groupthink.
So I wanted to set this up with that clip just to show you that this whole mentality of like, oh, we're hurt, our feelings are hurt by you, so we're going to cancel you, it's over. And I think the biggest proof of that is Shane Gillis's recent return to Saturday Night Live. They fired him a few years ago. If you don't know the story, he got hired to Saturday Night Live and probably largely from the Gillian Keefe stuff he's been doing on the internet. He does a great Trump impression, all that stuff. But they fired him before he even really got to do anything on the show. And he's been so successful by his own merit that they brought him back as the host. So I'm going to show you this little bit from Joke World, and this guy did a great compilation of all the comedians responding to it. But when you have people like Dana Carvey and David Spade on board at this point, like, it's over. And just listen to this, because this guy on Chris DeStefano's
Starting off with Theo
up.
Von.
Unbelievable. Wow. Part of me wonders if at the last minute he's going to be like, hey, sorry guys, it's just not for me. Kind of like they did to him, you know? It'll be interesting. But good for him, man. Congrats to Shane. He is so funny, man. I just think he's so funny.
Shane going back, being on the show that fired him, I'm going to call it now, and I'm not the first one to coin it, must-see TV.
Yeah, I mean, Norm went back.
Yeah, and again, it's like these guys, like Dana Carvey is arguably the comedy establishment, you know, like, and not that he's a bad person in any way. I mean, I love most of his work. But him and David Spade are like top of the food chain for like Hollywood comedy. And if they're saying this kind of stuff,
back when he got fired, and I thought that was interesting. But actually, Shane has blown up more than, I mean, Norm had done great after he left, but it was nothing like going from selling out clubs to selling out big theaters. Like, Shane is all around doing great, big money coming in, and big special. Someone called him the Taylor Swift for men, which is hysterical. Like, all guys like him. You know what I mean? He's like a guy's guy. He's big. He wears a t-shirt. He's just like a regular dude, and he just talks like dudes talk. But it's very clever.
Yeah, us as fellow comedians, you know, when you see Louis C.K. come up, or Norm or whatever, or David Spade, people who have a take on stuff you wouldn't think of. And Shane is the latest, greatest in that he's just doing it a little different than right before him.
Just a quick aside on Louis C.K. I love Louis C.K. And I think of all the people who got Me Too'd, he handled it better than anyone, because his response was, yeah, that's creepy. That's gross. I'm sorry. Have at it. You know? I can also kind of relate to his story, because as someone who was married, he was married at the time, so he didn't have sex with them. He like jerked off in the room with them or something. I'm like, maybe that's his way of like, you know, that's his cheat code, I guess. Like, because if you're a good guy, and I think that if you listen to the stuff Louis says deep down, he wouldn't cheat on his wife. So he kind of like, anyway.
It is his moment, and he's sneakily incredibly likable. He has, most comedians, I don't know if you have a laugh, but most comedians have a laugh that they do once in a while throughout their set. He just has a really charming one. Even if his bit is kind of edgy, he just wins you over.
So yeah, check this out. I'm going to jump up here. So listen to these guys.
It's really just about the kind of forgiving and forgetting of our society. That's what I like, is like, you know, now people are still trying to take him down with old resurfaced clips, and no, the world doesn't care anymore, because you realize, like, we got bigger fish to fry. That's a bullshit thing. Yeah. Comedy is a thing that is supposed to be not enjoyed by all, and usually the better comics will also simultaneously offend people. That's part of our job.
It's that way with any kind of art, I think, especially music, because there are phenomenal bands that I can't stand, but I can appreciate what they're doing music wise. And I think comedy is the same way. Art is subjective. You like what you like based on the way you were raised, or, you know, the influences in your own life. And so everything's not for everyone.
Beautiful thing to see the actual shift in
Listen to
public
this guy.
taste, right? Is like this. There was a huge outcry when he first gets hired. Sensitivity is flaring. Everybody's like, no, it becomes the biggest story. Now these exact same things come out, and people are like, fuck you, dude, it's funny. They're literally just batting it away. Like, you guys don't dictate this anymore. Yeah. You had your moment. We all went insane and listened to you. Yeah. And now we understand that you guys don't dictate taste. And if you are in charge, then nothing funny ever gets made.
That sums it up right there. And the whole Kurt Metzger thing is an example of, like Jimmy said at the opening of that segment, like, this is a clear look at this club, because they're not going to last much longer. You know, if you're a comedy club and you're doing that kind of stuff, like, that is over. I mean, maybe it's going to work in your tiny little, you know, subculture or whatever for a little while. Maybe. Good luck to you. But it's ridiculous. And again, it's just insane to me that the left or the Democrats have become literally the Christian right of the 1980s. Like, there's Satan in that. And the conservatives are still that way too, to some degree. But I don't see the conservatives trying to censor things. And please show me examples if you would like, because I have the biggest one I've seen is they're trying to get trans books out of schools. Fine. Those books shouldn't be in schools. If you want to teach your kids about trans issues, teach them at home. Once they're 18, it's fair game. But it's just, this stuff has gotten so stupid. So to continue down this path, Kurt Metzger was recently on Rogan. They're going to talk a little bit more about the cancel culture thing, and this is a really good piece of the conversation.
Don't go into Daddy's forbidden closet of mystery.
To set this up, he's talking about how during COVID, everyone had to stay home and they were bored, so people started looking into things, doing their own research. And
don't go into Daddy's forbidden closet of mystery. Oh, okay. I won't. Don't look into Hillary's email.
That's a hilarious one, to infantilize people to the point where you're telling them, don't research things.
Yeah.
We'll handle that. We're the professionals. Meanwhile, we lie all the time.
They're doing.
And so the point of me kind of showing this in succession with that last clip is that this cancel culture mentality, this like, well, I don't like this, so it's bad, is part of the news culture now. It's massively part of the news culture. It's so mind-blowing to me how many people still believe complete bullshit, like that Trump was a secret Russian or that January 6th was an insurrection. So listen, they kind of break down this a little bit. They show this whole New York Times thing, and this is why I wanted you to see this, because again, this like, oh, we don't like what you're saying. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If we don't like it, we're going to make sure you're not allowed to say it in our little, bubble.
To us what they did to Haiti. And the shit we do to other countries, they're going to do to you. So the shit we did to Haiti, which is never let them have their own leaders and coup them when they had one elected one.
So just sorry to keep interrupting this, but what he's saying here is so relevant, because what they do in other countries, they do to you. They basically passed this thing called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. And what that did was allow the US government to use the propaganda tools and techniques that it uses in other countries here in the United States. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look around. We'll get into this later. The neocons and the Democrats are on the same page, and they're trying to shut down anyone who opposes, just like in the Iraq era. But the Democrats are so propagandized now on issues like Ukraine and Israel and you name it, January 6th, that they're believing neocon shit. They have turned into the people that I was against during the Iraq War era. Just like slowly been churned into that with using Trump as the cudgel,
That's us now. Now that's us. We're going to pass a law so you can't vote for the guy you want. Why is he even being allowed to run at all if it's such a fascism is coming? I don't even understand the messages are so mixed. And the only way to believe them is to be highly frightened all the time.
New York Times.
Yes. And the COVID thing just really put that into high gear, didn't it?
Has just started doing this new thing on Instagram where they take the actual writers and they have the writers talk about the issues.
I'm leaving.
And when you see they don't understand what they're doing. This is exactly who we thought was writing these things. It's like this very effeminate guy and this woman that it's like the kind of woman that seems like
you
she
should have
would
never done this.
do at a party, like talk down to you. And
yeah, the dude from the New York Times that they're about to show looks like one of those snotty fucking trust fund kids that you'd meet at some high class party and who would be like, oh, you like Trump? You're a terrible person. What's wrong with you? You don't even know.
It's just who you thought.
Yeah, exactly. The type of people that would, these ultra liberal, out of touch people.
Yeah.
And these people are talking about, one of the guys was talking about Donald Trump's words being taken out of context.
And again, I hate having to say this because I've always considered myself a liberal, always. But the liberals are the dumb ones now. I did a tweet the other day that was like about MSNBC, and I said something to the effect of, once Trump popped up, MSNBC turned to Fox News and said, "Oh, you want to see cultish partisan hackery? Hold my beer," because Trump turned the liberals into that, and now they're supporting the Cheneys, like the Democratic Party and Dick Cheney are on the same page together against Trump. That tells you a lot.
Context that it would be a bloodbath because he was talking about the auto industry and the economy. And then this guy starts bringing up other episodes of violent rhetoric. It's hilarious. But you gotta watch this. Look, give me some blood. Give me some blood.
Well, what I guessed.
Seized on those comments and said they were an example of him calling for political violence or predicting violent actions if he didn't win in November. His supporters said that those comments were taken out of context.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
Trump has a history of using violent rhetoric dating back to his 2016 campaign. That language took on new significance after the January 6th attack on the Capitol in 2021. And throughout his third campaign for president, he's been getting...
Again, who had guns? I read a NPR piece that was like, "Oh, all these people had weapons." Like, okay, it did exactly what this guy did. Who's been charged? Who's been legitimately charged with weapons at January 6th? Like almost no one, maybe a couple random people. But they try to make it seem like it's an insurrection. And the NPR article, I should have clipped it, but it goes into. I'll do a piece on this on Rumble eventually, but this goes in this NPR article. Just I'll have to read it to you, but the way it's framed, they quote people from like NGOs. They're like, so and so from the Americans for Safety and Security says that there were several people who had weapons and they were very violent. It's like they don't cite any hard evidence. They cite these like flowery, kind of vague statements from NGOs, like these government organizations that are like CIA cutouts.
A lot of attention for the way he talks about violence and retribution on the trail. He suggested that
So this is the New York Times.
It's all
Kurt's laugh always corrects me.
This is these hard-nosed reporters with the cup of coffee that are like fucking chasing down Lees, and they're pulling their hair out, and they're meeting people in back alleyways. This is Woodward and Bernstein.
Do people think that's
this
still
is Watergate?
Like
no, but I mean they're essentially like ultra hard left activists that are masquerading.
I mean, Joe was being facetious. Like these are supposed to be journalists.
As journalists, and everything has their opinion on it.
They're
Every front page article.
Yeah, they're also masquerading as activists. They're bourgeois twits.
Yeah.
They have a lifestyle brand, which is I'm a Sex in the City guy or gal, and I work in the paper. They do the same.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. It's like these snotty, like, oh, I'm a sophisticated person who works for the New York Times.
Very cosmopolitan.
Same amount of work as when you see those a day in the life of Google. First they go to the chair.
It's Twitter. Yeah, that video is amazing.
Yeah, and they don't even make that. Well, New York Times, that's the big time. So all the plum jobs, like it's kind of similar to when people were mad that Seinfeld, they were like demanding why riding in to get coffee with Seinfeld in cars isn't a diverse enough.
Yeah.
And he goes, because Seinfeld, every time they bring these things up to him, I love his fucking response to that. But at a place like the New York Times, they have to go, oh, we need to bring these. So all like, how exactly you put it, you could guess what they look like. All of them have moved up from like the Gamergate, which at the time I was an adult and I was like, I don't care about this, but we're moving up in the world of media because where's the money coming from? You got to hope you do well enough at making little smear articles on a shitty video game website to get picked for the big leagues, and some people did.
Yeah,
and they've been moving up, and then like me, oh my god, 20 years have passed, and then I see like that's that little twerp Like if the one that got Shane fired actually went somewhere in life.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
If I like, there's people like him that work with the DHS about the terrorism of saying whatever the fuck this idiot's referring to.
Well, yeah, they've become embedded in the intelligence community.
Well, it's all a thing of like your career, right? If you want your career, you can either say the truth about a thing, or you can worry. Oh, you must not want to have a good career.
Yeah.
Oh, your career. All people have to do is not be a punk to their career. I'm not saying careers don't matter. I'm saying I will never be a bitch to a fucking career. Like, who would do that?
Yeah, but
I'll tell you who would do that. People who work at the New York Times. Anyway, that was just that whole interview is fantastic. And if you haven't watched it and you're a fan of Jimmy and Kurt, it's well worth the investment, because not only do they talk about that kind of stuff, but Kurt completely schools Joe on a bunch of stuff